We're live, we're live. Welcome to Conversations with Kara-Leah. I am Kara-Leah. Well, my name is Kara-Leah. Technically, I am not because I am consciousness. Anyway, I'm on the couch today with Angelena Davies. We're at her house in the Mount, and it's actually pretty warm, even though it's winter.
Yeah, I'm hot.
You're hot? I know. I'm like, I almost need to take off my merino. Welcome, Angie. Can I call you Angie?
Yeah, call me Angie.
Yeah, awesome. So, Angie and I met about 4 years ago, back when I was actually living in the Mount. I was doing a women's circle, a goddess circle of some description, and Angie rocked up a couple of times. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
What was it like for you? What were your impressions?
I remember thinking that this was going to be quite life-changing when I first rocked up to your thing. Yeah, I remember feeling that.
Yeah, because I think I got that sense as well. Like in the group of women, I just remember you sort of standing out as someone who was maybe more serious or more interested in that path of awakening.
Ready for change.
Ready for change, yeah. You were so ready. Yeah. And then from that, Angie got in touch with me because I'd written a couple of books, and she's like, hey, I'm writing my memoir and I need a developmental editor, which is one of the things I do. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to be your developmental editor. So we worked together for a couple of years.
That will be nearly 3.
Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah. On her amazing memoir. And at some point, Angie said to me, how am I going to get this published? And I'm like, I might be able to do that for you. And I started thinking about it because I've published 3 books now and I've done it all myself. And so I knew the process. I knew what was involved in publishing a book, but I'd never worked with another author. But you know, I felt like I love this book. You know, I'm going to show you guys the cover right now, The Heart and Flow of Motherhood. Here we go. This is a draft of, I think this is the first or second draft of the cover. So it's not the final, but it gives you an idea. And I wanted the book published, and I knew the easiest way would probably be if we just did it ourselves.
Yeah.
So
I was hunting high and low for a self-publishing company or a publishing company, and I just couldn't feel like it just felt way too hard the whole time. For about a year, I was just like, this just feels too hard. It's too overwhelming. I can't do it. There's just so much to do when you self-publish a book.
Yeah.
And then almost as if by magic one day you just said to me, I think I can help you. I think I'm going to start my own publishing company. And I was like, yes. And it just felt so incredibly light in that moment. And I was like, this is what I've been waiting for, for you to do that.
I know. And I think that's what I was feeling. Grateful. I was like, oh, I feel like I need to do this for you because I know how to do it and it feels easy for me to do it.
Yeah.
So you're the reason I started a publishing company because I'm like, if I'm going to do it for you, I might as well do it for other people.
Yeah. Well, so far it's been really, really easy working with you and working with the people in your team. Yeah,
Tara's amazing. Lisa, we've got an amazing team. Tara Spice, who's a graphic designer here in the Mount as well. She's so good.
Is she in the Mount?
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, you guys could actually meet up in person.
We could.
So this is how it all unfolded. And so now the book is coming out. What inspired you to write this? So the subtitle is a memoir of textbooks, tears, and tiny little fingers. What inspired you to write this book? What's it about? Give us the download.
Well, my best mate said to me when I was in the throes of writing my master's thesis about 6 years ago, and things were stressful. I had 2 young children, a husband who was a fisherman, worked away a lot. She said to me, man, your life is manic. You should be writing this down. This would make a great story. And at the time I was like, oh, really?
One more thing to
help
do?
me, you know. But I did. I started journaling little snippets of my time as a mother and also as a student. And it was a very cathartic process putting it all together in a memoir type style into a book. Because every time I would grab that snippet out of my journal and then do some reflections on it, I would have to go back to that dark place, to those times. And so when I was doing that, when I was writing, I was also doing lots of work, you know, and I've worked with you on a few issues that needed to be released around that traumatic time of my life. So coming to the end of the book is feels very free, you know, very light.
So just to be clear, so you started journaling while you were doing the masters. when things were manic.
Yeah.
And then once you completed the masters, and then later on, we're like,
a year later,
you're like, I have all of these journal entries.
Got to do something with it.
And then that's when you decided to actually write the book.
Put it into a memoir.
Yeah. Wow. So if you were doing a master's, how long did you spend studying? Like,
well, it was a 12-month scholarship that I scored.
Right. But in order to get to the master's, you must have done an undergraduate degree and then an honours and then like
look, I'm just like an addict when it comes to studying. So I actually did 2 years at Polytech in an early childhood degree.
Right. Do you have kids then?
No.
Right. So this is pre-children.
Pre-kids.
Yeah.
Then I did a 5-year undergrad degree, but it took 5 years because I fell pregnant in my first year. Mm-hmm. And so then I was a mother for the rest of it, for the next 4 years. So I just worked part-time. I studied part-time while my son was sleeping, or if Nana could take him, and Mm-hmm.
So you were showing up right from the beginning of your university degree as a mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my, yeah, right.
Yeah, and then I did, so there's 5 years doing the undergrad, and then 2 years doing honours.
Yeah.
Part-time, and then I was to do a 1-year master's, but I needed an extension after extension after extension on that one. So it ended up taking me 19 months.
Right, to do the master's.
Yeah.
So what was your master's on? So you did early childhood education at the Polytech. Yeah. What was your undergraduate degree?
It was in social sciences on education.
Yeah.
Namely sort of around student voice and learning, 21st century learning. Yeah, those sorts of topics.
So you're at university studying how to educate, how to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
While being a mother as well and bringing up children.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah.
So what's the hardest, like doing a master's, what's the hardest thing about that? Because, when I think, I don't even know really what a master's, like, I mean, obviously I know now because I've read your book, I know what's involved now. But prior to that, when people say they're a master's, I'd always just think, wow, that's amazing, because it seems like this incredible thing. Yeah. But what is it?
It's totally not. It's totally not like
that. It's not an incredible thing?
No, not anymore. So yeah. A master's involves you doing a bit of research. So I did 8 weeks of field research where I worked with children, and we co-designed a program to help them enhance their self-belief as learners. Mm-hmm. We used this approach called appreciative inquiry, and I researched how this approach would work on their self-belief of themselves as learners. And so I was studying, doing the field research like that, and then the rest of the time is spent writing. So you are literally, sitting in your office. Well, I had a funky little retro caravan. Yeah. But sitting in your office, writing for the rest of the time. So it's not like a great way to learn something.
Right.
Because I'm studying learning and about how you need to learn at your best and find out, the ways that different people learn. And yet I'm being forced to sit in my office and not have any interactions with people, and it was very isolating. It's a really isolating time.
So appreciative inquiry and working, so the learners that you're working with, the children you're working with, were they struggling at school, or were they just regular?
Meeting or just below national standards.
Right. And as a process of doing the program that you put them through, what was the outcomes for them?
What was really hard to monitor that, after the 8 weeks, if you like.
Yeah.
So I could really only go by what they told me about themselves, but their confidence had increased, and they were able to do things like go out onto a soccer pitch when previously they were a bit shy to do that, you know, or go and dance and do kapa haka and perform in front of people when previously they were really, really shy. And all of them shifted their self-belief around themselves as learners. They could see that they were good learners, just in a different context. Yeah. Take it out of the context of school.
So how often do you think students in a learning environment get an idea that they are stupid for example, but it's really more about their own self-belief than about their ability to learn.
How often?
Yeah, is that... I mean, I guess you can't really quantify that, but...
Yeah. I get a lot of parents coming to see me whose children are either doing fine at school, but they just don't feel like they just don't want to be there, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that I did my research is because there's lots of funding for kids who have special needs, for example, and there's lots of funding for kids who are gifted, but there's not much funding or attention given to those kids who are in the middle there, who are just, you know, they're doing okay at school or maybe just behind, but they're not given any funding, and it's not the way that they learn best, you know, through focusing on literacy and numeracy.
Yeah. So then when you're doing your masters and you're already getting an inkling, here I am doing a masters on how to support students to learn at their best, but the way the masters is set up doesn't support me to learn at my best.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're also mothering and running a household and running a family. How did you manage, because masters is full time, right?
Yeah.
Technically. 40,
supposed to be, yeah.
40 hours, yeah. So how was that, because that's what, I mean, that's the essence of the memoir, isn't it?
That was actually the hardest bit for me, and I was so lucky. I came across, too late in the piece, but I came across this research by Dr. Bailey Bosch. She's Australian, and she'd done a PhD on women who study, mothers who study, and she taught me about how mothers who study have this thing called role conflict. So what happens is a mother who studies wants to be the best student ever. You know, when you go back to study, right, you know, when you're not at high school anymore, you just want to do your best, you know. And so when you're in the role as student, you don't tell your supervisor that you're a mother. Or they might know you're a mother, but you don't tell them that you were up all night with a child with chicken pox, you know, or that the reason that you need this extension is because you've had to deal with this family issue, or that you hide your role as mother when you're in that role as student, because you don't want to seem like I don't know, like it's at a
not
disadvantage.
Taking it seriously, or like you've got other priorities.
Yeah, and then the flip side happens as well. Like when you're in your role as mother, I remember I didn't tell my friends that I'd put my child in front of TV for 5 hours so I could get my assignment finished, you know? Or that I hadn't cooked dinner properly for the last 3 nights and that I had Weet-Bix for dinner, and I couldn't be authentic in my role as mother because I didn't want them to think I was a bad mother, you know? So what happens is, this is what Dr. Bailey Bosch taught me, is that we hide ourselves in each role, and when we do that we feel really inauthentic because we can't be ourselves here because we feel like we're failing as a student, and then we can't be ourselves here because we're feeling like we're failing as a mother, and we're hiding each role from each other. And it's the inauthenticness that creates that disconnect, you know?
Right.
And I guess at the heart of my message, this is what I would love to just bring to the fore, you know, just kind of expose, to give mums some, I don't know, like a deeper understanding of why you might be feeling the conflict that you feel, and just to start that conversation with your friends, with your supervisor. If you're in a career, it's I've talked a lot to women about this and about my book. They feel it in a career role as well, you know, hiding their motherhood from their customers, if you like, their clients. Trying to remain all professional in that.
I had something similar because I've gone back to university this year, and I'm at full-time as well, so it's only a year. I'm doing screenwriting, and one of the reasons I'm able to do it is because there's only a few in contact days, right? So I only have to go in maybe 3 or 4 days a month to do workshops, and we had one scheduled, and my son had been sick for 4 days, and I felt like he was getting better, so I fully expected he would be better. And the day that we woke up and I had to go into this workshop, he was still sick, and I was like, I tried a few people, but trying to find someone on like an hour's notice to look after a child for a whole day, and I've got no family around me at all where I live, and I literally I couldn't go, and I burst into tears. Like I was so upset because it just so didn't seem fair that I couldn't go to university because I had a sick child, and that there was no one there to support me in that. Yes, I understand that, what you're saying. I can see how challenging. I mean, I had no problem messaging my tutor and saying, I'm really sorry, I can't come in because my child is sick. It didn't faze me too much, but I can see how it definitely happens for mothers in the workplace and at studying, of feeling like you have to hide the fact you have priorities and responsibilities because it might be seen as a weakness. As such.
And tell me, when you were disappointed that you had the sick child, did you feel any guilt about feeling disappointed about that?
No.
Any mother guilt?
No, because I don't get guilt.
Oh, lucky.
I was really curious. I was like, whoa, I've just burst into tears. This is really touching something deep in me.
Yeah.
So I was really curious to know what it was, and went in and did the process. And I think that's a really important point. Like, I know when I was reading your memoir, I was like, fuck, it was so hard for you because you experienced so much guilt about what you should have been as a mother.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that? Because it just felt like it was so heavy.
Yeah, and this is really common, really common. And I know you've done lots of work, so I'm yet to get there.
But you're on your way.
But it's really common for mothers to feel guilty about how they feel. You know what I mean? So because you're feeling resentful that you had to get an extension on your assignment, say, mothers then feel guilty for feeling that.
Fuck.
You know what I mean?
Can I just say fuck? That's a full-on layer, because I mean, if we can't feel what we're naturally feeling,
so we hide it, and resent it.
So how did you begin to make your way through that, to realize that? Because I guess what you're talking about is the society's expectations of what a good mother is. Is that what it was? Like a weight of how you should be
there
as
was
a
a
mother?
bit of society's expectations, but a lot of it was my own. So I had to do some deep sort of soul searching around, what is it that I think a good mother is? And so I write about a chapter about that. I actually did a Facebook poll once, and I said, can you send me in all your descriptions of what you think a good mother is?
Ooh.
Yeah, and I had someone, people were saying, makes their lunches, and does lots of baking, keeps all the tins filled with baking. And so what I find really interesting about that is say you choose to study or you have a career or whatever, and you don't get time to fill the tins of baking, and that's your perception, then that's when the guilt creeps in.
Right, because you're supposed to do this thing in order to be a good mother, and that you don't have time to do this thing, so without this thing you're no longer a good mother. Yeah. Even though you might be present with your children, you might be loving, you might be holding them and supporting them.
It's the perceptions that you have that are stored away, often from our own childhood, modelling from our own mothers, or watching that kind of thing.
So you now work with people, right? So can you describe your business? So you did your masters, and then when you came out, you looked around and went, I had this masters in appreciative inquiry and education and learning, now what?
So what I did is I started doing my program that I designed in the thesis with kids. Right. So I worked 6 weeks with the kids, and then what happened was I started to get kids coming in to see me that didn't have any learning problems, but they had low self-belief. They just didn't feel good to just be them. And then I was seeing their mothers would come in, could you do that program with me? And so my business grew really organically like that. I just had to really trust my intuition and just follow what wanted to be created without having a very clear business plan, And so, I just grew from there. I was seeing mothers and parents, and then I just started to see women in general, or women in business. And, so I do coaching using my appreciative inquiry approach, and then I also do energy work as well. Yeah.
Tell me about that. Tell me about the energy work.
Oh, so the modality that I use is through access consciousness. So it's called running the bars, and it's a really beautiful way actually just to kind of defrag the brain.
I love a good brain defrag.
Getting rid of like all the points of view that you have around things. So then you can just have a bit more space in your head.
Yeah.
People report feeling really peaceful and calm after a session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're using, what I'm hearing you say is that you're using sort of the intellectual model of appreciative inquiry, and then you've got this intuitive
I know,
way
it's
of working.
so weird that I do that I have this like academic background, but I'm really, I'm deeply in a spiritual realm as well.
Yeah.
Mesh the two together in my work.
That's the strength. And I think that's what's starting to come through more and more, is that people are starting to realise there's so much valuable in, say, the scientific or the academic way of perceiving and working with the world, like the intellectual way. But if it's not paired also with that deep intuitive knowingness feeling way of working, that can become dry and disconnected. And if the feeling intuitive way is not paired with an intellectual model or scientific understanding, it can become a little bit wishy-washy or ungrounded. So my sense is what I'm seeing with people, like when I spoke to Corin, conversation with Kara-Leah on Thursday, I think, she was saying the same thing. Like, she's a naturopath, so she's using this very hard data-based approach of functional testing and the way that she works with things, and she's deeply intuitive and using that. So she's bringing those two together. Yeah. So I'm not surprised to hear you say that same thing. When you were at university, do you think that, or did it feel like your intuitive innate knowing was being valued, or was it useful?
Not at all. Definitely not. And if anything, it prevented my intuitiveness.
Right.
Like it really inhibited it, because I was so thinking all the time. I was thinking and thinking and thinking all the time. I was constantly in my head. And then when I wasn't studying, if I was like making dinner or getting the washing in or whatever, I just felt like I couldn't stop thinking. And when you think so much, you do lose your ability to tune into your intuition.
Yes.
I remember standing at the supermarket aisle and there was toothpaste, lemon or mint, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'd lost my ability to just choose, to tune in and just choose stuff, because I was like, but what if, and using my head all the time,
I think you've just had a key point. Like, I find that with quite a few clients I work with, is they get stuck in overthinking and overwhelm because they're they're in their head, and they're attempting to use their head to figure things out, analyze things, overthink things in order to figure out. It's like, nah, forget all that. Like, thinking is an addiction. Drop down into presence, really connect to the center and just tune in and ask the question and wait for the answer to arrive, which is a whole different way to navigate reality. And it doesn't mean you don't use the mind as a tool when necessary, but primary orientation is the intuition. It's the presence.
Well, that's what I teach now. So now I also do workshops and I do holiday programs as well with kids, and I teach them this.
So you're teaching the children.
I also still teach children.
Yeah, cool. So you're teaching the children to orientate or navigate through
intuition,
and presence.
Yeah.
Epic.
Yeah, and they love it because that's their primary language. When you're born is energy.
Totally.
So they get it really quick.
Yeah. It's almost, I wonder if it's almost like you're giving them permission to operate the natural way. Yeah. When all the adults around them might be operating through the mind.
Have you thought about that?
Yeah, like do not think about shit anymore. Thinking is overrated.
Thinking is stinking.
Thinking is stinking. All right, so you've finished your memoir. Like, it's been 3 or 4 years. You've actually seen 5 since you started writing it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What did it feel like when you had the first draft of the cover sent through?
Oh, I just loved it. There's something really cool about having imagery with...
I'm going to show you again. Something really cool about having imagery.
Yeah. You just I feel really connected to the book from the cover. Yeah.
And this is your designer that did the artwork, right? So we've got this beautiful heart. Like, I love it. It's a physical heart.
Yeah.
And then the flowers underneath. I'm going to bring it closer again so you guys can see it. See the heart at the top and the flowers at the bottom. Yeah, she did a beautiful job.
Yeah, she did.
And
So that's Zoe Sizemore. She does all my branding and stuff.
Yeah.
And then she gave it to Tara to put the letters in and stuff.
Yeah. And create the book cover. So it's going to be out in September.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about holding the book in your hand? Because you've held a thesis, right? You did all that work on the thesis, and then how did you feel? Let's go back to the thesis for a moment. How did you feel when you actually held your thesis and it got marked? What you got?
It did get marked.
You got really good marks, didn't you? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I got first class.
First class honours, is that how? Or first class masters?
First, I don't even know.
But it's a first class. How did that feel?
Yeah.
After all the heartache, all of the tears, all of the textbooks and the tiny little fingers?
Yeah. It felt like someone appreciated my work. Yeah. It felt good that someone could see the value of what I'd done, and that my traumatic experience hadn't necessarily impacted the quality of my work, which was fucking amazing. That didn't happen.
Yeah, because that's the thing, right? It was over those 19 months, all of those extensions. It was traumatic for you, balancing that motherhood role with all the expectations you had internalized that you were carrying, and then attempting to turn up within this framework that wasn't actually supporting you to learn at your best and deliver the thing. And I'm not going to tell you any more because it's in the memoir, but the story is incredible. There's some real cliffhangers in there, some interesting things that go on. So you're holding it and it feels like, yay, someone appreciates the fact that I put all the work in and you came out with first class.
Yeah.
So now knowing that you're about to publish the memoir based on that experience, how's that feeling? Like people are going to read your life.
Yeah, that's a little bit like, ooh, what?
Right?
Because I do talk about my family, and I do talk about my friends, and I do talk about sex, and I do expose, a vulnerable part of my heart.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm really, I don't know if I'm driven, but I really want things to change for mothers.
Yeah.
I really want things to change for us so that things can be easier for us, that we can have more joy in our lives, that we don't have to carry around all this guilt, that we can use our voice and stand up for what feels right intuitively for us, and make choices rather than just going with what you think you should do. And I guess I'm committed. I'm committed to making, to helping this change, this culture of motherhood, as well as the manicness of motherhood too. I think that kind of comes through in my book a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
About how manic motherhood was, and that by slowing down and tuning into intuition, you can have a bit more peace around it. And so exposing my inner life will be worth it if I can help shift.
So that's things. Your overall, the overarching reason. It's like you want to support mothers into feeling less guilt, less manicness, less of all of that, more joy, more flow, more ease. Yeah. So if there is a mother who's watching this right now or in the future sometime who's still experiencing quite a bit of guilt, who feels a lot of expectation around what it means to be a good mother, what would you say to her in terms of what would be the first step to begin to work with that? I mean, aside from buying the book, right, which there's a PledgeMe campaign right now that Angie is running to raise the money for the publication and then the printing process. So we will put the links to that into the description. Highly recommend, if you are the person who likes to gift things, is to go on there and buy 5 or 10 copies, because it's a perfect gift to give the mothers in your life for birthdays, for Christmas, and you'll be done. This is a good thing about efficiency. You'll be done with gift buying for the next 6 months, because you can just give them, right? You can just give them Angie's book. That's what I intend on doing. I'm like, I know quite a few mothers who would benefit from this.
Well, do you know what? Someone reviewed my book, and she has bought, I think it was 8 copies, and she said, I'm giving one to my mother and one to my mother-in-law, because
Wow.
they need to know what it's like for mothers today. This is what it's like for mothers today. This is like the heart of the experience of a mother today.
Yeah, it so is. Like when I was reading it, I was like, whoa, that's what mothers experience. Because I mean, that is different from my experience, because I came in with, I guess, different conditioning around being a mother.
Yeah.
So I wasn't carrying the guilt, and that's when I realized like how freaking freeing it had been for me that I wasn't carrying that mother guilt or expectations of what a good mother should be. But when I read that, it really did help me understand, because I can see it in other mothers, and I could see that, and I was like, oh, that's what's going on for you. That's what's going on. So looping back around, aside from buying your book and buying bulk to give away to friends and family, if there's a mother watching this who is experiencing that, the internalized expectations, the guilt, that manic sense of it, what would be the first step? What would you say to her?
I would say try and let go of the thinking, like we were talking about before, that goes on. And I don't know, we haven't talked about mindfulness, but trying to just be really present in the moment, so that you can hear your intuition, and then follow your intuition with what feels right for you in that moment.
Let's talk about that, because that was a real turning point for you in the memoir, right? Because you didn't have a meditation practice really, or any practices.
Not at all.
So where did
I was
you
an academic. It was like, how do I think of nothing? Like that was just never going to happen. I would try and meditate, but thoughts just keep coming into my mind, and I was like, oh no, this sucks, I can't do it.
Yeah. So what's flicked the switch for you in terms of meditation or mindfulness, of it becoming a useful practice for you?
Yeah. I had one day, about 4 weeks before I finished the memoir, I had a panic attack. And so I took myself off to the doctor, who sent me to the psychologist. And I said to her, look, I don't want to come and see you lots, and I don't really want you to give me any medication or anything, but can you just help me take this big helmet off my head? Because my head was just so full of thoughts that honestly it was like a big motorcycle helmet. Like I could just like I needed someone to hold it up. And she taught me mindfulness.
Wow, so your psychologist taught you mindfulness.
In 1 hour. She sat down and she was like, this is how you do it. And that it didn't take 1 hour to learn mindfulness. It actually just took 5 minutes. Yeah. This one activity that she taught me, which I also talk about in the book, and I teach people now. And that was the turning point for me. Like I walked out of there and I was like, yes, I have a tool. I have a tool, and my head, wasn't completely unhelmeted, but I did have
unhelmeted. I like it.
But it did feel like lighter. Yeah. And so then I did have a tool that I could use every day or throughout the day to help me finish my thesis. Yeah. And so after that, it was like, right, I'm on to something. Yeah. So then I, trained and taught myself how to do it.
I think that's the key. Like in order to move from living in conditioned mind, which is like the languaging I use, and down into heartfelt presence, you need practices. Like whether it's yoga or mindfulness or meditation or Tai Chi, whatever practice it is that shifts you from identifying with the mind and letting it do its thing to identifying with presence and resting. Like being able to rest in that place, because thoughts are just not necessary a lot of the time. Yeah.
And mothers, the mothers that I work with anyway, are just not that great at resting. They feel like they need to just keep doing and doing and doing and producing, and that's a measure of their self-worth, of how much they can achieve in the day. And
let's talk a little bit about that before we wrap up, because I think this is crucial. The idea that in order to be a good mother, the more you produce or the more you do, the better a mother is and the more valuable she is. What's your sense?
Not just mothers either. I think it's just, I don't know. Yeah, it's becoming a thing of society.
Right? And do you have a sense of where that comes from, or why it's so ingrained, or what's your feeling around this idea that a human being's worth is dependent upon what they produce?
It could be the consumer society that we now live in,
right?
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my sense, is it's capitalism, because it's all about production. The more you produce for the least amount of input, the better things are. It's like, that's not actually true. The more you rest, the more things will happen with ease and flow, right?
So I run these retreats, and they're 2-day retreats, and they're for mothers who study or mothers who are in careers or have a business, and it's for them to come out and bring some work that they might want to get done. You know, sometimes you've got a project or something weighing on your shoulders, and so this justifies. They feel justified in coming out on retreat, right? Because they're like, okay, I'm coming out because I'm doing some work.
Yeah.
And then when they get there, I hit them with that, and I'm like, so by the way, if you choose, tune in with intuition, and if you choose to do nothing for the next 2 days, that could be the most productive thing you do. And they're like, what? What do you mean? How could I do nothing? Just sit and look at the lake or just read a book. But it's almost permission to, this rest could be good for you. It's like they've never thought about that before.
I love that. It's like you seduce them out by saying, come, spend time on your project. And then as soon as they arrive, what if you were to do nothing?
Yeah. And so most of them do some work.
Yeah.
But not as much as they think they need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of space in that 48 hours to rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not have to be working the whole time.
And producing.
Yeah.
I love that. More rest for everybody. All right, we're going to wrap up. So if anyone who is watching there has any questions about appreciative inquiry, which is what Angie studied and wrote her master's on, which is a particular way of learning. And I've actually started using appreciative inquiry with my clients.
Yeah.
Yeah, since reading all of your stuff, I was like, oh man, this is epic.
Yeah.
Like, look at what's working and do more of that.
Yeah.
Because so many people focus on their problem.
Yeah, and how to fix it.
Right? So I was reflecting on this the other day, actually, and I'm like, of course, whatever you focus on is what you create more of. And when people have a problem and all their energy is going on how to fix that, the underlying assumption is that something is wrong.
Yep. There's
something wrong with me.
Yep.
Yeah. And so this is why I'm finding it really powerful with clients, because instead of that, it's like, what if this is perfect? What's your desired reality? What would you love to experience? What do you need to do to move from here to there?
Yeah.
It's so much cleaner.
Yeah.
And it just shifts all that attention to the thing you don't want to the thing you do want.
And it's lighter.
It's so much lighter.
More joyful to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. So I want to thank you for that, because obviously because I've read and worked with you for a while with the book, and it really sank in that idea around appreciative inquiry. So I feel like it almost gave me an academic model for a way that I was already working.
Cool.
So now I can language it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is that whole thing of moving from intuitive knowingness and just things coming through to then being able to have an academic model or a scientific model or scientific language as a way to almost give it validity.
Does a bit, yeah.
Yeah, and because our society tends to give more weight or more value to things that have gone through the academic or the scientific process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a great thing.
Nah,
but
it's not
it is
necessarily,
what it is.
but that's it. It is what it is, and if that is useful to use that, then by all the means, use it. Any last words for mothers, or anything you want to say to people that may be watching around your memoir?
Anything I want to say to mothers? I've gone blank. Oh, I must have been doing some thinking. I would love you to buy my book.
Yeah.
I would love you to buy my book. I would love you to shift the experience of motherhood for you if it's not joyful for you, if you're struggling. I would love you to feel like you don't have to put up with things being that way, that you actually do have a choice. And above all, just to trust your intuition, trust what you know as a mother, and don't worry about what other people think you should do, or just find your intuition.
Awesome. Angie, thank you so much. Thank you for the way you show up.
Thank you.
For writing
I've
your
really
book.
appreciated you doing this for me. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All right, peeps, we're over now. That's another conversation on the couch with Kara-Leah. I will be back on Thursday with Jenny Jackson, who is the adaptive yogi. So her and I are going to be looking at body positivity and a few other things. I had a few awesome guests lined up for you, actually. I'm only telling you about Jenny today, though. If there's someone you want to have on the show, send me a message. And otherwise, have an epic, epic Sunday afternoon. Over and out.
Over and out.